fierce dog wouldn't let anyone pass until a little girl approached. People ran in panic down Maple Street whenever the dog appeared. For 3 weeks, no one could get past the end of the block without the animal charging, barking, and baring its teeth, blocking anyone from reaching the neighborhood square. Emily Johnson watched from her bedroom window as another attempt failed. This time it was Mr. George from the grocery store, who needed to deliver groceries to Mrs. Betty. But the brown and black dog came out of nowhere and began barking ferociously. "Mom, why can't anyone get through?" asked the 8-year-old girl, her brown hair falling over the blue dress she always wore. Jennifer, her mother, sighed while drying dishes in the kitchen. That dog showed up out of nowhere, and now it's stopping everyone from going to the square. Your father already tried talking to City Hall, but they say it's not their problem. The situation was becoming critical for the neighborhood. The square wasn't just a place for leisure. It was where the market was held twice a week, where children played after school, and where the elderly gathered every afternoon. Without access, the whole community's routine had been completely disrupted. Emily ran downstairs, her curiosity stronger than her fear. Through the front door, she could see the dog at the end of the street, sitting right where Maple Street met the entrance to the square. The animal didn't seem aggressive when alone, just watching everything with alert eyes. "Emily, don't even think about going out there," said Jennifer, sensing her daughter's intentions. "That dog has already bitten 3 people this week." "But Mom, he looks sad," the girl replied, pressing her face against the door's glass. David, Emily's father, arrived home from work just then, his face lined with worry. He worked as an electronics technician and always passed through the square to catch the bus home. Now he had to take a nearly 2-mile detour. "This is getting out of hand," he said, taking off his shoes at the door. "Mrs. Eleanor, the 90-year-old woman who lives alone on the back street, hasn't gotten her groceries in 2 days. No one can reach her house through the square. So what are you planning to do?" asked Jennifer. "Some neighbors are organizing a meeting tonight. We might have to take more drastic action about that dog." Emily shivered. She didn't know exactly what that meant, but from her father's tone, it wouldn't be good for the dog. Dinner was dominated by the topic. David explained that he'd spoken with several neighbors and that the situation was affecting not just routines but local businesses too. Mr. George's grocery store had lost customers who usually passed through the square, and Mr. Anthony's bakery was also suffering. "The dog doesn't seem to have an owner," David said. "No one knows where it came from. It just showed up 3 weeks ago and has been causing trouble ever since." "Maybe he's hungry," Emily suggested, stirring her beans with a spoon. "Emily, stop thinking about that dog," Jennifer scolded. "He's dangerous. He's already hurt people." After dinner, David left for the neighbors' meeting. Emily stayed in her room but couldn't focus on her school books. Through the window, she could still see the dog in the same spot, like a silent guardian protecting some secret no one knew. Around 9 that night, David returned from the meeting, looking even more serious. "So?" Jennifer asked. "We decided to call animal control first thing tomorrow. There's no other choice." Emily Johnson, who had been listening from the stairs, felt her heart race. She knew that when adults talked about animal control for a stray dog causing trouble, it usually didn't end well for the animal. That night, the girl barely slept. From her bedroom window, she could see the dog still in the same spot, even as the light rain began to fall. The animal didn't seem to have anywhere to take shelter, just staying there, getting wet in the drizzle. The next morning, Emily woke up early and went straight to the window. The dog was still in the same place, now soaked and looking even sadder. The girl had an idea. If she could get close to the animal and figure out why it was blocking the way, maybe she could find a solution that didn't involve forcibly removing the dog. "Mom, can I play in the backyard?" she asked during breakfast. "You can, but don't even think about going past the gate," replied Jennifer, who was preparing lunch. Emily agreed, but her plans were different. She took a piece of leftover bread from breakfast and tucked it into the pocket of her beige coat. Then she went to the backyard and carefully observed the dog's routine. The animal seemed to follow a pattern. It would sit in the same spot for hours, only getting up when someone tried to pass by. It didn't seem aggressive by nature, just protective of that specific space. This made Emily think there was something more behind its behavior. Around 10 in the morning, she heard voices approaching. It was the animal control team accompanied by some neighbors, including her father. Emily felt a growing urgency. If she wanted to do something, it had to be now. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Hoping the adults would be distracted by preparations to capture the animal, Emily slipped silently through the back gate, which led to an empty lot connecting to the parallel street. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the end of Maple Street, staying hidden behind parked cars. When she finally got close enough, she could see the dog more clearly. It was a medium-sized animal with brown and black fur, floppy ears, and expressive eyes that seemed to carry deep sadness. It didn't look fierce like everyone said, just lost. Emily took a deep breath and took her first step toward the animal. The dog noticed her immediately, but instead of barking or acting aggressive, it just tilted its head, as if trying to understand why a child was there. "Hi, puppy," Emily said softly, stopping a few feet away. "I won't hurt you." The dog watched her for a few seconds before letting out a low whimper, almost like it was trying to communicate. Emily pulled the piece of bread from her pocket and showed it to the dog. "Are you hungry?" she asked, taking another step. To her surprise, the dog didn't move. It just kept watching her with those pleading eyes. Emily stepped a little closer and held out the bread. That's when she heard shouts from the street. "Emily, get away from there now!" It was her mother's frantic voice. The noise and yelling startled the dog, which immediately stood up and began barking at the approaching group of adults. Emily, frightened by the sudden reaction, stumbled and fell onto the ground. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of attacking the fallen girl, the dog stopped barking instantly and moved closer to her, sniffing gently and showing concern. It was as if the child's presence completely calmed him. "Stay still, Emily Johnson," shouted David, running toward his daughter along with the other adults. But Emily Johnson wasn't afraid. Up close, she could see that the dog was thin, with some old scars on its fur, and that one of its eyes was slightly injured. More importantly, she noticed the animal was wearing an old worn-out collar with a small identification tag, so dirty it was unreadable. "Dad, he's not dangerous," Emily Johnson called out. "He's just scared." When David and the others got closer, the dog once again took a defensive stance, barking and preventing them from approaching the girl. It was an unprecedented situation. The animal that had kept everyone away for 3 weeks was now protecting an 8-year-old child. "Emily Johnson, get up slowly and come here," Jennifer instructed, her voice trembling with nerves. "No, Mom." "Look," Emily Johnson pointed to the dog's collar. "He has a tag. He has an owner." This revelation completely changed the situation. If the dog had an owner, it meant he wasn't abandoned, just lost or searching for someone. The animal control officer, a man named Michael, watched the scene with interest. "If you can grab the tag, young lady, maybe we can find out where he's from," Michael said. Emily Johnson looked at the dog, who had stopped barking and was now watching her carefully. Slowly, she reached for the collar. The dog stayed still, letting her touch the ID tag. The tag was so dirty and scratched it was hard to read, but Emily Johnson could make out a few letters, Buddy, and some numbers that might have been a phone number. "His name is Buddy," Emily Johnson announced to everyone, "and there's a number here, but I can't read it well." The discovery that the dog had a name, and possibly an owner, changed the dynamic. David stepped closer, watching the dog's reaction. Buddy growled softly but didn't show the aggression he had with others. "Emily Johnson, can you take off the collar?" David asked. The girl looked at Buddy, who watched her with trust. Slowly, she worked to loosen the old collar. The dog stayed still, as if understanding she was trying to help. When she finally got it off, Emily Johnson handed it to her father. David wiped the tag with his sleeve and could read the information more clearly. "Buddy, phone 3456-7890, David read aloud. Michael, the animal control officer, immediately took out his phone and dialed the number. Everyone fell silent, waiting to see if someone would answer. After a few rings, a frail voice picked up. "Hello? "Good afternoon, we're calling about a dog named Buddy. Did you lose a pet?" The response on the other end moved everyone. It was the voice of an elderly man, clearly emotional. "Buddy? You found Buddy. Where is he? Is he okay?" Michael explained the situation and the address where they were. The man on the phone, who introduced himself as Walter, said he'd come as fast as he could. He lived just a few blocks away, in the housing complex near the neighborhood square. While they waited for the owner, Emily Johnson stayed seated on the ground beside Buddy, who finally seemed relaxed. The dog even accepted the piece of bread she offered, eating hungrily. "How did you know you should approach him?" Jennifer asked, still amazed by her daughter's courage. "I just looked into his eyes and saw he wasn't mean," Emily Johnson replied, stroking Buddy's head. He looked sad, not angry. About 20 minutes later, an elderly man with white hair came running down the street, clearly out of breath and emotional. It was Walter, a man around 70 years old, who had been living alone since his wife passed away 2 years earlier. "Buddy, my boy!" Walter shouted as soon as he saw the dog. Buddy's reaction was immediate and heartwarming. The dog leaped up and ran toward the old man, jumping and barking with joy. A completely different kind of excitement from the aggressive barks everyone had known. Walter knelt on the ground and hugged the dog, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he said, kissing the top of the dog's head. 3 weeks of searching, 3 weeks. The scene moved everyone present. Finally, the mystery behind Buddy's behavior was being solved, but one question remained. Why had he chosen that exact spot to stay? "Mr. Walter," said David, "can you explain why Buddy was blocking people from passing through here?" The old man looked around, taking in the place where they stood, and his expression shifted to one of understanding mixed with sadness. "He was waiting for me," Walter said, his voice breaking. "Every day for 5 years, Buddy and I walked to this neighborhood square. It was our routine. He knew if he stayed here, I'd eventually show up." "But how did he get lost?" asked Emily Johnson, genuinely curious. Walter took a deep breath before answering. 3 weeks ago, I had a health scare and had to be rushed to the emergency room. Buddy was with me when it happened, but in the chaos, he ran off. When I came home a few days later, he was gone." The story was becoming more and more touching. Buddy hadn't been blocking people out of aggression. He'd been faithfully waiting for his owner in the place they always met. "So he was never really aggressive," Michael observed. "He was protecting the spot where he hoped to find you." "Exactly," Walter confirmed. "Buddy's always been a protective dog, but he'd never hurt anyone without reason. He was probably scared and confused, not understanding why I wasn't coming." Emily Johnson felt proud for trusting her instincts. She had sensed there was more to the dog's behavior, and her courage in approaching him had been key to resolving the situation. "How did you know you should get close?" Walter asked Emily, clearly impressed. "I looked into his eyes and saw he was waiting for someone," the girl replied simply. "He didn't seem like a bad dog. He seemed like a dog who missed someone." Walter smiled through his tears. "You have a very special heart, young lady. Buddy's always been good at recognizing good people. That's why he let you near him." With Buddy and Walter reunited, life in the neighborhood could finally return to normal. The square was accessible again, and all the problems caused by the blocked passage would be resolved. Mrs. Eleanor could receive her deliveries, Mr. George's grocery store would regain its usual foot traffic, and the children could play in the square after school. But the story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. In the days that followed, Emily Johnson couldn't stop thinking about Buddy and Walter. She had asked her mother if they could visit the elderly. Man and Jennifer, moved by the story, agreed. On Thursday afternoon, Emily and Jennifer walked to the housing complex where Walter lived. His home was small but well kept, with a garden full of plants and flowers. Buddy greeted them at the door, clearly happy to see Emily again. "I'm so glad you came," Walter said, inviting them inside. Buddy wouldn't stop looking for the girl who had helped him. Walter's house was simple but cozy. There were photos everywhere, of him with his late wife, Margaret, and many pictures of Buddy at different stages of life. It was clear the dog was much more than a pet to the elderly man. He was family. "Mr. Walter," said Emily Johnson, "do you live alone?" Yes, my dear. Ever since my wife Margaret passed 2 years ago, Buddy has been my only company. Emily noticed the sadness in the old man's eyes when he mentioned his wife. It was the same sadness she had seen in Buddy's eyes when she found him on the street. "Do you feel lonely?" the girl asked with the innocence typical of children. Jennifer felt a little embarrassed by her daughter's bluntness, but Walter smiled. "Sometimes, yes, my dear, but Buddy keeps me company. We take care of each other." During the visit, Emily noticed Walter struggled with some household tasks. His hands trembled slightly, and he moved carefully, as if always worried about falling. "Mr. Walter," Jennifer said, "do you have children or other relatives? Who can help you?" "I have a son, Michael, but he lives in New York and can only visit every 2 or 3 months. He keeps insisting I move there, but I can't leave Buddy. And this is my home, you know. Margaret and I made so many memories here." Emily had an idea. "Mom, couldn't we help Mr. Walter?" Jennifer looked at her daughter fondly. Emily's kindness always amazed her. "What do you have in mind, sweetheart?" "I don't know. Maybe we could visit him more often, and Buddy too. They could come to our house sometimes." Walter was visibly moved by the offer. "You'd really do that?" "Of course," Jennifer replied. "It would be our pleasure, and I'm sure my husband would be happy to help however he can." From that afternoon on, Emily, Jennifer, and David began visiting Walter regularly. Emily loved playing with Buddy in the yard, while the adults talked about all sorts of things. Walter turned out to be a fascinating person, full of stories about his life and the neighborhood. But spending more time together also revealed problems Emily hadn't noticed at first. Walter was struggling financially. His pension was small, and the cost of medicine and Buddy's care ate up most of his income. One afternoon, when Emily visited Walter alone with her parents' permission, she noticed he seemed sadder than usual. "What's wrong, Mr. Walter?" the girl asked. "Nothing serious, my dear. Just grown-up troubles." But Emily insisted, and Walter finally admitted he'd received an eviction notice. The landlord wanted to raise the rent by 40%, and Walter couldn't afford it. "What are you going to do?" Emily asked, worried. "I don't know, my dear. Maybe I'll have to accept my son's offer and move to New York. But I don't know what to do with Buddy. In New York, he'd have to live in a tiny apartment with no yard." Emily was devastated. The thought of Walter having to leave and maybe part with Buddy was unbearable. She'd grown very attached to the old man and his dog, and they clearly adored her too. That night, Emily told her parents about Walter's situation. "Dad, can't we help him somehow?" the girl asked. David sighed. He liked Walter a lot, but his own finances were tight. Working as an electronics technician, he earned enough to support his family, but didn't have extra to help with. "Someone else's rent." "Emily Johnson, I'd love to help, but we can't afford to pay his rent," explained David. "But there must be something we can do," insisted Emily Johnson. Jennifer, who worked as an administrative assistant at a school, had an idea. "What if we organized a campaign in the neighborhood? A lot of people were grateful you solved Buddy's problem. Maybe they'd want to help." The idea excited Emily Johnson, but David was more cautious. "I'm not sure it'll work. People have their own problems, and even if we raise some money, it would only be a temporary fix." Despite her father's doubts, Emily Johnson was determined to try to help Walter. The next day, she started talking to the neighbors about the elderly man's situation. The first person she approached was Mr. George from the grocery store. "Mr. George, do you remember Mr. Walter, Buddy's owner?" "Of course, the girl who fixed that whole mess. How is he?" Emily Johnson explained the situation, and Mr. George grew thoughtful. "Look, Emily Johnson, I'd like to help, but sales at the store have been slow. Ever since that issue with Buddy, a lot of customers changed their habits and haven't come back." The answer discouraged Emily Johnson, but she didn't give up. She went to Mrs. Betty, the elderly woman who always shopped at Mr. George's store. "Mrs. Betty, would you like to help Mr. Walter?" "My dear, I'm retired too and can barely pay my own bills. If I could help, I would, but I just can't." Answer after answer, Emily Johnson began to realize the situation was more complicated than she'd imagined. Most people in the neighborhood had their own financial struggles and couldn't contribute much. Frustrated but not defeated, Emily Johnson had another idea. What if instead of asking for money, she organized some kind of fundraiser? She talked to her parents about the possibility of hosting a neighborhood summer festival with the proceeds going to help Walter pay his rent. David and Jennifer liked the idea, but warned it would be a lot of work with no guarantee of success. Besides, David added, even if we help this month, what about next month? And the one after that? It was a hard question to answer. Emily Johnson was learning that solving real-world problems was much more complicated than she'd thought. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. As Emily Johnson tried to find a solution for Walter's problem, other challenges arose. Buddy, who had grown used to the girl's constant visits, became anxious when she didn't show up every day. Walter told David that Buddy spent hours at the door, waiting for Emily Johnson, and sometimes even howled from missing her. This made Emily Johnson feel even more responsible for the well-being of the elderly man and his dog. You might have created an emotional dependency, Jennifer told her daughter, concerned. Buddy and Mr. Walter have grown very attached to you. But is that bad? Asked Emily Johnson. It's not bad, David explained, but it's a responsibility. When you form a strong bond with someone, you also take on the commitment not to abandon them. Emily Johnson understood what her father was saying, but it only strengthened her determination to find a solution for Walter's problem. A week later, she had a new idea. She'd noticed that Walter was very skilled with plants and gardening. His garden was the most beautiful in the housing complex, full of colorful flowers and well-tended plants. Mr. Walter, said Emily Johnson during a visit, could you teach other people how to care for plants? Of course, my dear, I've learned a lot over the years. Why do you ask? What if you gave gardening lessons? People could pay to learn, and you'd have some extra income. Walter fell silent for a moment, considering the idea. That's an interesting thought, Emily, but I'm not sure people would be interested. Let's find out, Emily said excitedly. With her parents' help, Emily made flyers advertising Walter's gardening lessons. They posted them at Mr. George's grocery store, Mr. Anthony's bakery, and a few other spots around the neighborhood. On the first day of class, only 2 people showed up. Mrs. Shirley, a middle-aged woman who had always wanted a garden, and John, a young man in his 20s who had recently moved to the area and wanted to grow herbs at home. Emily was disappointed by the small turnout, but Walter was grateful. It's a start, my dear, he said. 2 people are better than none. The lessons took place in Walter's garden, with Buddy always nearby, watching curiously. Walter proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and knowledgeable. Mrs. Shirley and John were amazed by the elderly man's wisdom. Gradually, word about the gardening classes spread. Mrs. Shirley told her friends how she had learned to care for roses, and John showed his co-workers the herbs he had managed to grow. By the 2nd month, Walter had 8 regular students. Emily was thrilled by the success of the classes, but she soon realized the income still wasn't enough to fully cover the rent increase. Walter was earning some extra money, but not enough to handle the landlord's proposed hike. Then a new problem arose. Walter's landlord showed up unexpectedly during one of the gardening lessons and grew angry at the sight of several people in the yard. "What's going on here?" asked the landlord, a middle-aged man named Raymond. Walter explained about the gardening lessons, but Raymond didn't like the idea at all. "This wasn't in the lease," he said. "You can't use this house for commercial activities." "But it's just a few people learning about plants," Walter argued. "Doesn't matter. Either you stop this immediately, or I'll have to terminate the lease right now." The situation grew even more complicated. Emily, who was there during the argument, was outraged by the landlord's attitude. "But Mr. Walter isn't doing anything wrong," she protested. "Little girl, this isn't your concern," Raymond snapped. David, who had arrived to pick up Emily, stepped into the discussion. "With all due respect, Mr. Raymond, these lessons are helping Mr. Walter earn extra money to pay rent. I don't see why that's a problem." "The problem is that my house wasn't rented to become a school," Raymond replied. "And another thing, we've decided to sell the house. Mr. Walter has 60 days to move out." The news hit like a bombshell. 60 days was far too short for Walter to find another place, especially given his financial limitations. Emily was devastated. All their efforts to help Walter seemed to have been in vain. The old man and Buddy would have to leave, and she had no idea how that would even be possible. That night, Emily could barely eat dinner. She was so worried about the situation that she completely lost her appetite. "Sweetheart, I know you're concerned about Mr. Walter," said Jennifer, "but you have to understand some problems are beyond what we can fix." "But it's not fair," said Emily Johnson, tears in her eyes. "Mr. Walter is a good person. Buddy is a good dog. They don't deserve this." David sat beside his daughter. "Life isn't always fair, Emily. Sometimes good people go through hard times, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying to help." "So what can we do?" asked Emily. "Let's talk to Mr. Walter and see what his options are," replied David. "Maybe we can help him find another place to live." The next day, the family visited Walter to discuss the new situation. The elderly man was visibly downcast, but tried to stay optimistic in front of Emily. "My son Michael called yesterday," Walter shared. "He wants me to move to New York as soon as possible. Says he can help me find a place there." "What about Buddy?" Emily asked, worried. Walter sighed deeply. "Michael said his apartment doesn't allow pets. He suggested I find Buddy a new home." Emily's heart ached. The thought of Walter having to part with Buddy was unbearable. She looked at the dog, lying at the old man's feet, completely unaware of the conversation deciding his fate. "Mr. Walter, you can't do this," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Buddy loves you and you love Buddy." "I know, my dear, but sometimes in life we have to make hard sacrifices for the people we love." "But Buddy isn't a person," Emily protested. "He's your family." Walter smiled sadly. "You're right, Emily, Buddy is my family, but maybe it's better for him to be with a family who can take proper care of him." Emily looked at her parents, desperate. She could see they were moved by the situation too, but didn't know what to do. "What if Buddy stayed with us?" Emily blurted out. Jennifer and David exchanged glances. They had never considered having a pet. Their house was small and they could barely manage their own expenses. "Emily," Jennifer said gently, "taking care of a dog is a lot of work and costs money. Food, vet visits, vaccines." "I can help," Emily insisted. "I can use my allowance to buy food." David weighed the situation carefully. He knew Emily was speaking from emotion, but he also saw how much she cared for Buddy and Walter. "Let's think about this calmly," David said. "It's a big decision that shouldn't be made in the heat of the moment." Walter, seeing Emily's distress, tried to comfort her. "My dear, you've already done so much for me and Buddy, more than anyone else has. Don't feel responsible for solving all our problems." But Emily did feel responsible. She had formed a deep bond with Walter and Buddy, and the thought of losing them was devastating. That night, Emily had a serious talk with her parents about adopting Buddy. "Dad, Mom, I've never asked you for anything important," she said, "but I'm asking now, please let Buddy come live with us." David and Jennifer looked at each other. They knew their daughter was sincere. Emily was an easy child who rarely made demands. "Emily," Jennifer said, "having a dog is a huge responsibility. Are you sure you're ready for this?" "I am," Emily replied firmly. "I love Buddy and he loves me too." "And when Buddy gets sick," David asked, "when he needs to go to the vet, that costs money." "I could look for small jobs to help," Emily suggested. "I could help neighbors with their gardens like Mr. Walter." "Does?" David was impressed by his daughter's determination. He could see she had seriously thought about the responsibility she was taking on. "Let me talk to your mother about this," said David. "I'm not promising anything, but we'll consider the possibility." Emily Johnson felt a little more hopeful, but there was still the bigger problem. Walter still needed to move out, and she didn't want to lose him too. In the following days, Emily became obsessed with finding a solution that would allow Walter to stay in the neighborhood. She researched every house and apartment for rent in the area, but they were all beyond the elderly man's budget. That's when she had a bold idea. What if Walter came to live with them? The family's house was small, 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and 1 bathroom. But Emily thought they might be able to make it work. She could share a room with her parents and give her bedroom to Walter. When she suggested the idea to her parents, they were surprised. "Emily," said Jennifer, "our house barely has enough space for the 3 of us. How can we accommodate another person?" "I'll sleep on the couch," Emily offered. or I can share the room with you." David admired his daughter's generosity, but was realistic about the limitations. "Sweetheart, it's not just about space. It would mean another mouth to feed, more expenses for electricity, water, everything. We don't have the financial means for that." Emily felt frustrated. It seemed like all her ideas ran into the same problem: money. She was learning a hard lesson about how financial limitations could deeply affect people's lives. Determined not to give up, Emily decided to ask other families in the neighborhood if they could help Walter. She visited Shirley, who had been one of the elderly man's gardening students. "Shirley, wouldn't you like to have Mr. Walter living with you? He could take care of your garden." Shirley was embarrassed by the question. "Emily, dear, I've lived alone for many years and I'm used to it. It wouldn't be good for either of us to have two strangers sharing a home." Emily then approached John, the young man who had also taken lessons with Walter. "John, don't you have a spare room where Mr. Walter could stay?" "Emily, I share an apartment with two other guys. We don't even have enough space for ourselves." With every no she received, Emily grew more discouraged. She was beginning to understand that solving real-world problems was much more complicated than she had imagined. 1 week before the deadline for Walter to leave his home, Emily decided to make one last attempt. She organized a meeting with all the neighbors to explain the situation and ask for help. The meeting took place in the neighborhood square that Buddy had guarded for 3 weeks. About 20 people showed up, including George, Betty, Shirley, John, and several others who knew Walter. Emily, though just an 8-year-old girl, spoke with the determination of someone much older. "Everyone," she said, standing on a bench to make herself taller, "you all know Mr. Walter and Buddy. They need our help." She explained the situation in detail: the rent increase, the landlord's decision to sell the house, the possible separation between Walter and Buddy. "I know everyone has their own problems," Emily continued, "but Mr. Walter has always been good to everyone. He's never asked anything of anyone. Now he needs help, and we're the only family he has here." The crowd was moved by the girl's speech, but the practical limitations remained. George was the first to speak. "Emily, everyone here likes Mr. Walter, but times are hard for all of us. I don't know how we can help in a practical way." Betty agreed. "The girl is right about Mr. Walter being a good man. But what she's asking is beyond our means." Emily Johnson felt tears forming in her eyes but refused to give up. "What if everyone contributed a little?" she suggested. "It doesn't have to be much, just enough to help with the rent." "Emily," said Mrs. Shirley gently, "even if we managed to raise money for this month, what would we do next month and the one after? It's not a sustainable solution." It was John who asked the toughest question. "Emily, have you talked to Mr. Walter about what he wants? Maybe moving to New York really is the best option for him." Emily fell silent. She hadn't considered the possibility that Walter might actually be relieved at the prospect of moving closer to his son. The meeting ended without concrete solutions, but with a commitment that everyone would try to think of alternatives. Emily returned home discouraged and confused. "Sweetheart," said David, noticing Emily's emotional state, "sometimes, no matter how much we want to help someone, we can't solve all their problems." "But I promised Buddy I wouldn't let Mr. Walter leave," said Emily, crying. "You promised Buddy?" asked Jennifer, surprised. "Not in words," Emily explained. "But when I looked into his eyes, it was like I promised I'd take care of him and Mr. Walter." David knelt in front of his daughter. "Emily, you're a very special girl. Your heart is full of love and kindness. But you need to learn that we can't always save everyone, no matter how much we want to." "Then what happens to the people we can't save?" asked Emily. "They find other paths," David replied. "And sometimes those paths are better than we imagine." The next day, Emily went to visit Walter to talk honestly about the situation. She found the elderly man packing his few belongings into cardboard boxes. Buddy lay in the corner, watching everything with sad eyes. "Mr. Walter," said Emily, "are you sad about having to move?" Walter stopped packing and sat in a chair, motioning for Emily to sit beside him. "You know, Emily, I have mixed feelings. On one hand, I'll miss this place, the memories with Margaret, our friendship. On the other hand, I'm curious about life in New York and spending more time with my son." "What about Buddy?" asked Emily. Walter looked at the dog affectionately. Buddy is the hardest part. I can't take him with me, and the thought of us being apart breaks my heart. Emily took a deep breath before asking the question she had planned. Mr. Walter, what if I took care of Buddy for you? It wouldn't be like a separation. It would be more like shared custody. How do you mean, dear? You could move to New York, but Buddy would stay with me. And whenever you came back to visit the neighborhood, or if I could visit you in New York, Buddy would be with us. Walter was silent for a long time, considering the proposal. Have your parents agreed to this? Not yet, Emily admitted. But they're thinking about it. And I know they'll say yes if I show them I can take good care of Buddy. Emily, taking care of a dog is a big responsibility. Buddy needs food, vet care, daily exercise. I know, Emily said firmly, and I'm ready for it. Walter looked at Buddy, who had moved closer and now rested his head on Emily's knee. You know what? Walter said. Buddy seemed to choose you from the very first day. Maybe he knew you'd be important in his life. So you'll let him stay with me? Emily asked hopefully. I'll talk to your parents, Walter promised. If they agree, I think it would be the best solution for Buddy. Emily Johnson was excited about the possibility, but there was still a deep sadness in her heart. Even if she could keep Buddy, she would lose Walter, and that made her very sad. That afternoon, Walter went to talk to David and Jennifer about the possibility of Emily adopting Buddy. The conversation was long and serious, covering all the practical and emotional aspects of the decision. Mr. Walter, said David, we really like Buddy, and we see how attached Emily has become to him, but we want to be sure we're making the right decision. I completely understand, Walter replied. It's a big responsibility, but I can assure you that Buddy is a gentle, well-behaved dog who would adapt well to family life. And the costs? Jennifer asked. Food, vet visits, vaccines. I'll leave some money for the first few months, Walter offered. And I can keep contributing when I can, even from New York. Emily, who had been listening to the conversation from the stairs, ran down. Dad, Mom, please, I promise I'll take good care of Buddy. I'll feed him every day, walk him, give him baths. David and Jennifer exchanged glances. They could see the sincerity and determination in their daughter's eyes. Emily, Jennifer said, if we agree to this, you'll have to prove you can keep your promises. Taking care of Buddy can't just be fun, it's work. I know, Emily said seriously, and I'm ready. After a private discussion between David and Jennifer, they reached a decision. All right, David said, we'll try it for a trial period. If Emily shows she can handle the responsibility, Buddy can stay with us permanently. Emily jumped for joy and ran to hug Buddy, who seemed to understand that something important had been decided. Walter was visibly moved. Thank you so much, he said. You don't know how much of a relief this is for me. Knowing Buddy will be with people who love him makes all the difference. The last days before Walter's move were intense and emotional. Emily spent most of her time at the old man's house, cherishing every moment with him and helping him prepare for the trip. Walter taught Emily all the specific care Buddy needed, his preferred meal times, the type of food he liked, the places he enjoyed walking, and the signs that showed when he was sick or worried. Buddy has a routine, Walter explained. He likes to eat at 7 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. He enjoys walks in the late afternoon when the sun isn't too strong, and he always sleeps at the foot of the bed. Emily paid attention to every detail, determined to make Buddy feel comfortable in his new home. And when he misses you? Emily asked. Buddy is smart, Walter said. He'll understand I didn't abandon him, and knowing you love him will comfort him. On moving day, Walter said goodbye to Buddy in an emotional scene. The old man knelt on the ground and hugged the dog for several minutes, whispering words of affection into his ear. You'll stay with Emily now, Walter told Buddy. She'll take good care of you, and I'll come back to visit, I promise. Buddy seemed to understand the situation. He didn't show restlessness or anxiety, just a quiet sadness that broke everyone's heart. Emily also said goodbye to Walter with tears in her eyes. Mr. Walter, do you promise you'll call often? I promise, my dear. And who knows, maybe you and Buddy can visit me in New York someday. Really? Emily asked excitedly. Of course, my son would love to meet you both. With that, Walter got into the taxi that would take him to the bus station, leaving behind a lifetime of memories and starting a new chapter in New York. Emily Johnson and Buddy stood still on the sidewalk, watching the taxi disappear down the end of the street. It was the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the first few days with Buddy at Emily's house were an adjustment for everyone. The dog clearly missed Walter, but gradually began getting used to the new routine. Emily proved to be extremely dedicated to Buddy's care. She woke up early to feed him, took him for walks before school and spent afternoons playing with him in the backyard. "I'm impressed with Emily's responsibility," David remarked to Jennifer. "She's really taking this seriously." "That's true," Jennifer agreed, "but it's still early. Let's see how she handles it once the novelty wears off." But Emily didn't seem to treat Buddy as just a passing phase. She established a careful routine and stuck to it religiously. She made sure to bathe him once a week, brushed his coat daily, and even set aside part of her allowance to buy special treats for him. Buddy, in turn, proved to be a loyal and affectionate companion. He seemed to understand that Emily was his new family and quickly adapted to the household's habits. He slept at the foot of her bed, just as he had with Walter, and followed her around the house. 2 weeks after Walter's move, Emily received his first call from New York. "Hi, Mr. Walter," Emily said excitedly upon hearing the elderly man's voice. "Hello, my dear, how are you both doing?" "We're good. Buddy's adjusting. He still gets sad sometimes, but I always pet him and he feels better." "And you? Are you taking good care of him?" "Yes, Mom and Dad say I'm doing really well. Yesterday I gave him a bath all by myself." Walter was moved by her words. On the other end of the line in New York, he was adjusting to life in the big city, but missed Buddy and Emily terribly. "Michael, my son, is happy to have me here," Walter shared. "But I admit I miss the neighborhood, the people, the quiet." "You're not happy there?" Emily asked, concerned. "I am, dear. It's just a matter of adjustment. And knowing Buddy is doing well makes all the difference." The calls became weekly. Emily always shared updates about Buddy, and Walter talked about his experiences in New York. These conversations became the highlight of the week for both of them. However, not everything was perfect in Emily's new life with Buddy. At school, some classmates began making negative comments about her having a mutt. "Why didn't you buy a purebred dog?" Jessica, a classmate, asked. "Mutts are for poor people," Emily was outraged. "Buddy isn't for poor people. He's my friend and he's the best dog in the world." "But he's not even cute," Jessica insisted. "My dad bought me a poodle. It's much more elegant." Emily tried to ignore the comments, but they bothered her. She started questioning whether Buddy was really special or if she was just being naive. One afternoon, when Emily was particularly upset by her classmates' remarks, Buddy seemed to sense her mood. The dog walked over and rested his head on her lap, looking at her with those expressive eyes that seemed to say, "I understand you." Emily hugged Buddy and realized it didn't matter what others thought. The bond she shared with him was genuine and special, regardless of his breed or appearance. "You're perfect just the way you are," she whispered into Buddy's ear. But the problems at school were only just beginning. A week later, Emily Johnson discovered that some classmates were spreading rumors that she had stolen Buddy from his real owner. "Emily took that dog from a homeless man," said Brandon, a classmate, to a group of kids. "My mom said that's stealing." Emily was furious when she heard the rumor. "That's not true," she protested. "Mr. Walter isn't homeless, and he gave me Buddy because he couldn't take care of him anymore." "Then why couldn't he take care of him?" Brandon insisted. "I bet you lied to keep the dog." Emily tried to explain the real situation, but she realized some classmates had already made up their minds. This left her very sad and confused. At home, she told her parents about the problems at school. "Dad, the boys at school are saying I stole Buddy," said Emily, tears in her eyes. David was outraged. "That's ridiculous. Who's saying these things?" Emily told him about Brandon and Jessica and how the rumors were spreading. "Sweetheart," said Jennifer, "sometimes people say things they don't understand. You know the truth about how Buddy came to live with us?" "But what if the teacher believes them?" asked Emily. "What if someone tries to take Buddy away from me?" David knelt in front of his daughter. "Emily, we have all the paperwork for Buddy's adoption. Mr. Walter made sure everything was in order. No one can take Buddy from you." Even so, Emily stayed worried. At school, she began isolating herself, avoiding the classmates spreading rumors. This affected her grades and her overall mood. Buddy, always sensitive to Emily's emotions, started showing signs of anxiety. He could tell his new owner was stressed, and it made him restless. One night, Emily woke up and found Buddy standing at the bedroom door, staring toward the window and letting out soft whimpers. "What's wrong, Buddy?" she asked, concerned. The dog kept looking at the window, as if searching for something or someone. Emily realized Buddy missed Walter. She picked up the phone and called him even though it was late. "Hello?" answered Walter, clearly sleepy. "Mr. Walter, I'm sorry to call so late, but Buddy is acting strange. He's staring out the window and whining." Walter sounded worried. "He does that sometimes when he misses me. Try talking to him, Emily. Tell him I'm okay and that I'll come visit." Emily followed Walter's advice. She sat on the floor, beside Buddy, and started talking to him as if he could understand every word. "Buddy, Mr. Walter is doing fine in New York. He said he misses us, but he's happy, and he's going to visit soon." To her surprise, Buddy stopped whining and looked at her intently as if he really understood. "I know you miss him," Emily continued. "I do too, but now we're a family, you, me, Dad, and Mom, and families take care of each other." Buddy moved closer and rested his head on Emily's lap, like he always did when he wanted to show affection. The next day, Emily had an idea. What if she organized a presentation at school about Buddy's story? Maybe if her classmates knew the truth, they'd stop spreading rumors and understand the real situation. She talked to her teacher, Mrs. Susan, about the possibility of giving a presentation on responsibility for pets. "That's a wonderful idea, Emily," said Mrs. Susan. "You can prepare it for Friday." Emily spent the next few days carefully preparing her presentation. She asked David for help making posters with Buddy's pictures and Jennifer to practice what she would say. By Friday, Emily was nervous but determined. She began her presentation by telling the story of how she met Buddy and Walter. "Buddy wasn't a stray dog," she explained to the class. "He was waiting for his owner, Mr. Walter, who had fallen ill. When they were reunited, Mr. Walter had to move to New York and couldn't take Buddy with him, so he asked my family to take care of him." She showed pictures of Buddy with Walter and talked about all the responsibilities she had taken on to care for the dog. "Taking care of Buddy isn't just fun and games," said Emily Johnson. "I have to feed him on time, take him for walks every day, give him baths, brush his fur, and always make sure he's doing okay." The presentation was a success. Several classmates asked questions about Buddy and showed genuine interest in the story. Brandon, who had spread rumors, apologized to Emily. "I'm sorry, Emily, I didn't know the whole story. Buddy seems like a really cool dog." "He is," replied Emily, happy to finally clear things up. After the presentation, Jessica, the classmate who had criticized Buddy for being a mutt, approached Emily. "Emily, can I meet Buddy someday?" she asked. "Of course," Emily replied, surprised but pleased. By the end of the week, Jessica went to Emily's house to meet Buddy. To everyone's surprise, Buddy and Jessica got along great. "He's so sweet," Jessica said, petting Buddy. "I was wrong when I said mutts weren't pretty. Buddy is beautiful." "It doesn't matter if a dog is purebred or a mutt," Emily said. "What matters is the love they give and receive." Gradually, other classmates began asking to meet Buddy. Emily's house became a gathering spot for the neighborhood kids, who loved playing with the dog. Buddy, who had initially been used to the quiet life with just Walter, slowly adjusted to the bustle of having so many children around. He proved to be patient and affectionate with everyone, confirming his gentle nature. But not everything was perfect in Emily's new life with Buddy. A few weeks later, Buddy got sick. He started vomiting and lost his appetite, leaving Emily extremely worried. "Dad, something's wrong with Buddy," Emily said, watching the dog, lying listlessly in the corner. David examined Buddy and agreed he wasn't well. "Let's take him to the vet," David decided. The vet visit was the first real major responsibility Emily had to face with Buddy. Dr. Frank, the veterinarian, examined Buddy carefully. It seems like indigestion, he diagnosed. He probably ate something he shouldn't have. So I'll prescribe some medicine and a special diet for a few days. Will he be okay? Emily asked, concerned. He will, Dr. Frank reassured her, but you need to be more careful about what he eats. Dogs are curious and sometimes eat things that aren't good for them. The cost of the visit and medicine was $200, which put a significant dent in the family budget. David paid without complaint, but Emily noticed the tension on her father's face. "Dad, I'm sorry," Emily said on the way home. "I didn't know it would be so expensive." "Emily, it's part of the responsibility of having a pet," David explained. "That's why your mother and I wanted to make sure you were ready. I'll find a way to help pay," Emily promised. That night, Emily cared for Buddy with total dedication. She gave him his medicine on time, prepared the special food the vet had recommended, and stayed by his side, petting him until he fell asleep. "You'll get better, Buddy," she whispered. "I'll take care of you until you're completely well." In the days that followed, Emily proved to be even more responsible. She would wake up at dawn to check if Buddy was okay, strictly controlled his diet, and refused to go out to play with friends until she was sure Buddy had fully recovered. Emily Johnson's dedication impressed David and Jennifer. They realized their daughter had matured a lot since taking on the responsibility of caring for Buddy. "Emily is taking this very seriously," Jennifer remarked to David. "I'm proud of her." "So am I," David agreed. "She's showing a maturity I didn't expect." When Buddy fully recovered, Emily felt accomplished. She had faced her first crisis as Buddy's owner and handled the situation with responsibility and love. To fulfill her promise of helping pay the vet bills, Emily decided to offer dog walking services to her neighbors. She made posters offering to walk neighborhood pets for a small fee. Her first client was Miss Helen, an elderly woman who had a small poodle named Princess. Miss Helen had broken her leg a few weeks earlier and was struggling to walk her little dog. "Emily, would you really do this?" Miss Helen asked. "Princess needs exercise, but I can't take her out with this broken leg." "Of course, Miss Helen," Emily replied. "Buddy and I would love to keep Princess company." The walks with Princess became a pleasant routine. Buddy got along well with the little poodle, and Emily discovered she enjoyed caring for other animals besides Buddy. Gradually, other neighbors began hiring Emily's services. Mr. Michael, who worked long hours and had no time to walk his beagle, Rocky. Miss Pamela, who had recently adopted a stray puppy and needed help house-training him. Emily became known in the neighborhood as the dog girl. She took Buddy along on every walk, and the dog became a sort of mentor to the other animals, always calm and well-behaved. With the money she earned walking the neighborhood dogs, Emily managed to pay her parents back the $200 for Buddy's vet visit. It was a moment of great pride for her. "Dad, here's the money," Emily said, handing the bills to David. David was moved by his daughter's gesture. "Emily, you didn't have to do this. We cover Buddy's expenses because he's part of the family. But I promised I'd help," Emily insisted. "And I want you to see I can be responsible." "We already see that every day," Jennifer said, hugging her daughter. "We're so proud of you." 2 months after Walter moved to New York, Emily got a special call. "Emily," Walter said excitedly, "I have a surprise for you." "What surprise, Mr. Walter?" "I'm visiting you next weekend. Michael is driving me there." Emily was thrilled by the news. Finally, she and Buddy would see Walter again. She ran to tell Buddy, who seemed to understand something special was happening. "Buddy, Mr. Walter is coming to visit us," Emily said, hugging the dog. Buddy barked happily, as if he truly understood. The days until Walter's visit felt endless to Emily. She planned everything down to the smallest detail, cleaned the whole house, prepared the guest room, and even trained Buddy to perform some tricks she had taught him. On Saturday morning, when Michael's car pulled up to the house, Buddy was the first to notice. The dog ran to the door, barking excitedly and wagging his tail wildly. When Walter stepped out of the car, Buddy practically leaped into his arms. The reunion was emotional for everyone present. Walter knelt on the ground and hugged Buddy for several minutes, while the dog licked his face and showed all his joy. "My boy, how you've grown," said Walter, petting Buddy, "and how handsome and well cared for you are." Emily Johnson approached timidly, a little nervous to see if Walter would approve of the care she had given Buddy. "Mr. Walter, is Buddy okay?" she asked. Walter looked at Emily with tears in his eyes. "Emily, Buddy is perfect. I can see you took care of him with so much love. He's happy, healthy, and clearly loves you very much." The comment made Emily feel proud and relieved. She had kept her promise to take good care of Buddy. During the visit, Walter met Michael, his son who had brought him from New York. Michael was a man in his 40s, polite and kind, who clearly cared deeply for his father. "Emily," said Michael, "my father won't stop talking about you and how you saved Buddy. I'm so grateful for what your family has done." "We're the ones who should be thanking you," replied Emily. "Buddy made our lives so much happier." Walter spent the entire weekend at Emily's house. He observed the routine she had established with Buddy and was impressed by the level of care and dedication. "Emily takes better care of Buddy than I ever did," Walter remarked to David and Jennifer. "Her dedication moves me." "Emily has always been a special child," said Jennifer, "but caring for Buddy made her mature even more." During the visit, Walter talked about his new life in New York. He was living in a comfortable apartment near Michael's place, had made some friends in the building, and was even giving gardening lessons to the residents. "The city is different from what I was used to," Walter shared. "But I'm adjusting, and having Michael nearby makes a big difference." "Are you happy there?" Emily asked. "Yes, my dear, but I miss you all very much, especially you and Buddy." "We miss you too," said Emily, "but I'm glad you're doing well." On Sunday, as Walter prepared to return to New York, the goodbye was emotional once again. Buddy clearly didn't want Walter to leave. "Hey, Buddy," Walter said, stroking the dog. "You have to stay here and take care of Emily. She needs you." Buddy looked at Emily and then at Walter, as if understanding he had to choose between them. "Buddy, you stay here with me," Emily said, petting the dog. "Mr. Walter will come back to visit us again." "That's right," Walter confirmed. "And who knows, maybe you can visit me in New York too." The idea excited Emily. "Really?" "Of course. Michael already said you'd be welcome any time." With that promise, the goodbye felt less sad. Emily and Buddy stood on the sidewalk, waving until Michael's car disappeared down Maple Street. After Walter's visit, Emily noticed Buddy had become calmer and more at ease. It was as if reuniting with his former owner reassured the dog that he hadn't been abandoned, just given a new family. Emily and Buddy's routine continued harmoniously. School had started again after the break, and Emily was doing very well. Her presentation on pet responsibility had been so well received that her teacher invited her to present it to other classes. Her dog walking business was also growing. Emily now had 5 regular clients and was saving money to buy Buddy a new doghouse. One afternoon, as Emily Johnson was walking Buddy and 3 other neighborhood dogs, she encountered a situation that would test all the skills she had developed. In the square where Buddy had waited for Walter for 3 weeks, Emily saw a group of children teasing a small frightened dog. The animal was cornered under a bench, trembling with fear. "Leave him alone," Emily shouted, approaching the group. "Relax," said one of the boys. "We're just playing." "This isn't playing," Emily replied firmly. "You're scaring him." Buddy, sensing the tension, calmly approached the frightened dog and lay down beside him, showing there was no danger. Buddy's behavior soothed the small dog, who slowly came out from under the bench. "You have to be careful with strange dogs," one of the boys said. "He might be mean." "That's not how you tell if a dog is mean or not," Emily answered. "You have to look into his eyes, see if he's scared or angry." Emily knelt on the ground and held out her hand to the small dog, just as she had done with Buddy months before. The dog sniffed her carefully before moving closer. "He's lost," Emily realized, seeing that the dog had no collar and looked like he'd been on the streets for days. "So what?" asked one of the boys. "Not our problem." "It's everyone's problem," Emily countered. "When an animal is in need, whoever can help should help." Emily knew she couldn't take another dog home. Her parents had made it clear that Buddy was all they could handle, but she also couldn't just ignore the situation. She decided to take the small dog home temporarily while she looked for a permanent solution. "Mom," Emily said when she arrived, home with the small dog, "I found this little lost dog in the square. Can I take care of him just until we find a family for him?" Jennifer sighed as she saw the thin, dirty animal. "Emily, we can't take care of 2 dogs." "I know," Emily said, "but I can't leave him on the street. I'll look for a family. For him, I promise." David, seeing the situation, decided to support his daughter. "All right, but only for a few days, and you'll be responsible for finding him a family." Emily agreed and immediately began caring for the small dog, whom she temporarily named Tiny. She bathed him, gave him food and affection, and set up a spot for him to sleep. Buddy was incredibly welcoming to Tiny, sharing his food and toys without issue. It was clear Buddy had learned generosity and kindness from Walter. Over the next few days, Emily made posters about Tiny and put them up around the neighborhood, searching for both his original owner and a new family willing to adopt him. Her first suspicion was confirmed when no one came forward looking for Tiny. The dog really was abandoned and needed a new home. Finding a family for Tiny turned out to be harder than Emily had imagined. Most people who showed initial interest backed out when they learned about the costs and responsibilities of caring for a pet. "We want a dog for the kids," one interested family said, "but we don't want to spend too much money on vet bills and all that." Emily patiently explained that pet ownership involved financial and time commitments, but many people seemed to want only the fun without the responsibilities. After a week of searching, Emily was feeling discouraged. Tiny had settled in well and had clearly grown attached to her and Buddy, but she knew she couldn't keep him forever. Then Shirley, Walter's gardening student, showed up at Emily's house. "Emily Johnson, I heard you're looking for a family for a little dog." "Yes, Mrs. Shirley, are you interested?" "Actually, I am. Ever since I learned to tend a garden with Mr. Walter, my home has become very beautiful, but it's missing life. A little dog would be perfect." Emily was excited, but wanted to make sure Mrs. Shirley understood all the responsibilities. "Mrs. Shirley, taking care of Tiny is a lot of work. He needs food every day, baths, walks, affection, and sometimes trips to the vet." "I understand, dear. This wouldn't be an impulsive decision. I've thought a lot about it." Emily took Mrs. Shirley to meet Tiny. The dog, always affectionate, immediately approached the woman and started wagging his tail. "He's such a sweetheart," said Mrs. Shirley, petting Tiny, "and he seems very well behaved." "He is," Emily confirmed. "Buddy taught him a lot." After a long conversation about all the aspects of caring for Tiny, Mrs. Shirley decided to adopt him. Emily was happy, but also a little sad to say goodbye to the little dog she had cared for over a week. "Mrs. Shirley, do you promise you'll take good care of him?" Emily asked. "I promise, dear, and you can visit him whenever you die." Tiny's adoption by Mrs. Shirley was a success. The dog quickly adapted to his new home, and Mrs. Shirley proved to be a loving and responsible owner. Emily visited Tiny regularly, always accompanied by Buddy. It was heartwarming to see how the dog she had saved from the streets was now happy and well cared for. The experience with Tiny made Emily realize she had a special talent for working with animals and helping them find families. She began considering the possibility of working with animals when she grew older. "Dad," Emily said one day, "when I grow up, I want to work with animals." "As a vet?" asked David. "Maybe. Or maybe helping lost animals find families. Like I did with Tiny." "That's a lovely idea," David said. "You certainly have a gift for it." Emily's life had completely changed since meeting Buddy. She had learned about responsibility, empathy, and how small actions could make a big difference in the lives of others. Buddy, in turn, had found a new family that loved him just as much as Walter. He was happy, healthy, and had become a full-fledged member of Emily's family. But the story wasn't over yet. A few months later, Emily received a call that would change her life's dynamic once again. "Emily," Walter said excitedly over the phone, "I have a proposal for you." "What proposal, Mr. Walter?" "Michael is thinking about moving back here. He got a job in the area and wants me to come back too. Would you like to share Buddy's care again?" Emily fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. The possibility of having Walter back was wonderful, but she also worried about what it would mean for her relationship with Buddy. "Mr. Walter, does that mean Buddy would live with you again?" "Not necessarily," Walter replied. "I thought maybe we could share. Buddy could spend some days with me and some with you. That way, we could both keep taking care of him." The idea was interesting, but Emily wanted to talk to her parents before answering. "Can I talk to my parents and call you back?" "Of course, my dear, there's no rush." Emily told David and Jennifer about Walter's proposal. Their initial reaction was positive. "It would be nice to have Mr. Walter back in the neighborhood," Jennifer said, "and Emily could keep spending time with him. And Buddy would be happy getting to be with both of you," David added. But Emily Johnson had doubts. During the months caring for Buddy, she had grown deeply attached to the dog. The idea of sharing time with him wasn't as simple as it seemed. "What if Buddy prefers staying only with Mr. Walter?" asked Emily Johnson, voicing her fears. "Emily," said David, "you and Buddy have formed a very strong bond. That won't change just because Mr. Walter is back. Besides," added Jennifer, "Buddy has enough love for both of you. It's not a competition." Emily Johnson thought about the situation for a few days. She observed Buddy carefully, trying to understand what would be best for him. Buddy, in turn, seemed to sense that something was being decided. He became more affectionate and attentive toward Emily Johnson, as if trying to show his love for her. Finally, Emily Johnson reached a decision. She called Walter to give her answer. "Mr. Walter," she said, "I talked to my parents and thought a lot about your proposal." "And what's your decision, my dear?" "I think it would be good for Buddy to spend time with both of us. But I want to make it clear that no matter how we divide the time, Buddy will always be welcome in our home." "Of course, Emily, and you'll always be welcome in my home too." "When do you plan to return?" "Michael found a house to rent just 2 blocks from where I lived before. We'll be back next month." The news excited Emily Johnson. The prospect of having Walter back, keeping Buddy, and continuing her special friendship with the older man was the best possible outcome. The following month, Walter and Michael returned to the neighborhood. The house they rented was larger than the previous one, with a spacious garden where Walter could resume his gardening activities. The reunion between Walter and Buddy was emotional. The dog was clearly overjoyed to see his former owner again, but also clearly showed his attachment to Emily Johnson. "Look," said Walter, watching Buddy run between him and Emily Johnson. "He's happy to be with both of us." "That's true," agreed Emily Johnson. "He doesn't have to choose between us." The arrangement of sharing Buddy's care worked better than anyone had imagined. During the week, Buddy stayed with Emily Johnson, accompanying her to school and on walks with other dogs. On weekends and holidays, he stayed with Walter, helping in the garden and greeting his new gardening students. "It's like Buddy has 2 families," observed Jennifer. "And he seems to love it," added David. Emily Johnson and Walter developed a harmonious routine. They communicated daily about Buddy's care, shared veterinary expenses, and planned the dog's activities together. "Emily," Walter said one day, "you know Buddy wouldn't be the same without you, right?" "What do you mean, Mr. Walter?" "When you found him on the street, he was lost and confused. You didn't just help him find me. You helped him learn he could love and trust people other than me." Emily Johnson was touched by his words. "You've taught me a lot too," she said. "Before meeting Buddy, I'd never taken care of an animal. Now I know I want to work with them when I grow up, and you'll be very good at it," Walter assured her. Michael, Walter's son, also settled well into the neighborhood. He was an engineer and got a job at a local company. He quickly became friends with David and Jennifer, and often joined in family activities. "So it's nice to have an extended family," Michael remarked one day. "Dad was right when he said you're special people." Michael's presence in the neighborhood also brought unexpected benefits. He helped David with some electrical issues at home and offered to teach Emily Johnson about science, since she had shown interest in learning more about animals. "If Emily Johnson wants to work with animals," said Michael, "she needs to understand biology, anatomy, and many other sciences." "Can you teach me?" asked Emily Johnson excitedly. "Of course. We can start by studying Buddy. Do you want to understand how his body works?" Michael's informal lessons became a regular activity. Emily Johnson learned about animal anatomy, nutrition, behavior, and many other areas related to animal care. Buddy, always present during the lessons, unintentionally became a study model. Emily Johnson learned to identify signs of health and illness, understand nutritional needs, and interpret canine behavior. "Buddy is helping you prepare for your future career," Michael joked. "It's true," Emily Johnson agreed. "He's my first teacher about dogs." A year after Walter's return, Emily Johnson had become a little expert in animal care in the neighborhood. In addition to continuing her dog walking services, she began giving advice to other pet owners and even helping new pets adjust to their families. "Emily Johnson," said Mrs. Pamela, who had recently adopted another puppy, "can you help me teach this puppy to do his business in the right place?" "Of course, Mrs. Pamela. It's just a matter of patience and consistency." Emily Johnson developed training techniques based on what she had observed with Buddy and the information Michael had taught her. She became known in the neighborhood as the girl who understands dogs. Her animal care business grew so much that she needed Buddy's help to manage everything. The dog became her official assistant, helping to calm nervous animals and demonstrating proper behaviors for pets in training. "Buddy has turned into a therapy dog," Walter joked. "He helps other animals feel safe." "He's always been special," said Emily Johnson, petting Buddy, "since the very first day I saw him on the street." The partnership between Emily Johnson and Buddy became so well known in the neighborhood that others began seeking their help for behavioral issues with their pets. "Emily Johnson," said Mr. John, an elderly man who had adopted an adult dog. "My dog barks at every stranger. Can you help me?" "Yes, Mr. John. I'll bring Buddy to meet your dog." Sometimes they learn by watching other calm dogs. The technique of using Buddy as a behavior model worked surprisingly well. Other dogs seemed to calm down in his presence and gradually copied his appropriate behaviors. "It's like Buddy is the teacher for other dogs," Michael observed. "He radiates calm and confidence." "That's what Mr. Walter always taught him," explained Emily Johnson. "Dogs learn more by example than by words." 2 years after meeting Buddy, Emily Johnson had transformed into a confident and responsible young woman. At 10 years old, she had a thriving little business, many friends in the neighborhood, and a special relationship with Walter that had enriched her life immensely. Buddy, now fully adapted to his life shared between two families, had become the happiest and most sociable dog in the neighborhood. He was known and loved by everyone, and his reunion story with Walter had become a local legend. "Remember when Buddy wouldn't let anyone pass on the street?" Mr. George often remarked. "Who would have thought he'd become the most beloved? A dog in the neighborhood." "It's amazing how things can change," Mrs. Betty agreed, "and all because of the courage of an 8-year-old girl." Emily Johnson's transformation was just as remarkable. The shy girl who had approached a frightened dog on the street had grown into a confident, enterprising, and respected young woman in the community. "Emily Johnson has changed so much since she met Buddy," David remarked to Jennifer. "She's matured, but she's kept her kindness." "And Buddy has changed too," Jennifer observed. "He was a lost dog, and now he's a dog who helps other animals." "They saved each other," David concluded. The story of Emily Johnson and Buddy had become an example in the neighborhood of how small acts of courage and kindness could transform lives. Children and adults often referred to them when talking about helping animals in need. "If Emily could help Buddy," people would say, "then we can help other animals too." The duo's impact extended beyond animal care. The friendship between Emily Johnson and Walter inspired other children to connect with the elderly in the neighborhood, creating an intergenerational network of support. "Emily taught us that age doesn't matter in friendship," said Jessica, who now regularly visited an elderly woman on her street. "And that everyone has something to teach and something to learn," added Brandon, who had long since apologized for the rumors he had spread. Walter, in turn, had found a new purpose in life. In addition to his gardening lessons, he began telling stories to the neighborhood children about his life, plants, and the importance of caring for animals. "My life has become so much richer since I met Emily Johnson," Walter told Michael. "She reminded me that there's always something new to learn and someone new to love." "And Emily found a grandfather in Hart," Michael observed. "You two complete each other. The special bond between Emily Johnson, Buddy, and Walter had become the emotional heart of the neighborhood. Whenever there was a problem involving animals, people turned to the trio for help and advice. When Mrs. Rose found a litter of abandoned kittens, it was Emily Johnson who organized the search for foster families. When Mr. Manuel needed to travel and had no one to care for his parrot, it was Walter who volunteered to look after the bird. "So you three have become the neighborhood's animal emergency center," Jennifer joked. "It's a responsibility we take seriously," Emily Johnson replied, always mature in her responses. Life in the neighborhood had become more harmonious and supportive since Emily Johnson, Buddy, and Walter had reunited. Their story proved that sometimes happy endings are even better than we imagine, because they bring benefits not just to the main characters but to the entire community around them. And so the girl who had the courage to approach a mean dog on the street had grown into a young woman who made a difference in the lives of many animals and people. Buddy, the dog who had blocked the path while searching for his owner, had become an ambassador of canine kindness. And Walter, the elderly man who had almost lost his faithful companion, had found an extended family that enriched his golden years. The neighborhood square where it all began was now a regular meeting place for Emily Johnson, Buddy, Walter, and all the animals they had helped over time. It was common to see Emily Johnson giving training tips to new pet owners, Buddy patiently playing with puppies, and Walter telling stories to curious children. "This square has become an education center for animals," Michael remarked, proud of his father and his young friend. "It's the place where Buddy taught me that first impressions aren't always right," said Emily Johnson, stroking her loyal companion. "And where I learned it's never too late to make new friends and start new chapters in life," Walter added. Buddy, now a mature and wise dog, seemed to understand the importance of his role in the story. He remained affectionate and protective, but he had learned that not all strangers were threats. On the contrary, many of the people who approached him needed help and kindness. Buddy's complete transformation from a fierce dog who wouldn't let anyone pass to a therapy dog who helped other animals symbolized an important lesson about snap judgments and second chances. "The neighborhood learned so much from the three of you," Mrs. Shirley said one day. "They learned about patience, about not judging by appearances, and how small gestures can change lives. We just did what we thought was right." "Emily," Johnson replied simply. "Exactly," said Walter. "And sometimes doing what we think is right is exactly what the world needs." On weekends, it became common to see Emily and Buddy visiting other neighborhoods to help with more complex cases. You have animals with behavioral issues. Their reputation had spread, and local veterinarians often recommended them for specific cases. "Emily," said Dr. Frank, the vet who had cared for Buddy when he was sick, "you have a natural talent for working with animals. Have you ever considered studying veterinary medicine?" "I have," Emily replied, "but I also love helping animals find families and teaching people how to better care for their pets." "There are many areas in veterinary medicine," Dr. Frank explained. "You could specialize in animal behavior or work with responsible adoptions." The idea excited Emily. She was beginning to envision a professional future that combined her passion for animals with her ability to help people. Michael, always eager to support Emily's education, started taking her to visit veterinary colleges in nearby cities. These visits broadened the young woman's horizons and confirmed her calling. "Emily," Michael said after one college visit, "if you keep dedicating yourself the way you have, I'm sure you'll be an excellent veterinarian." "Thank you, Michael. Your lessons helped me understand animals so much better." "And Buddy was your best hands-on teacher," Michael added with a smile. Buddy, always present in these conversations about the future, seemed proud of his young owner. He had grown alongside her, learning about patience, responsibility, and unconditional love. The family dynamic between Emily, her parents, Walter, Michael, and Buddy had settled naturally and harmoniously. Sundays became a special event, with shared lunches where everyone gathered to catch up on the week's news. "Our family has tripled in size," Jennifer joked during one of these lunches. "And improved in quality," David added, raising his glass in an informal toast. "To our extended family," said Walter, always sentimental. "And to Buddy, who brought us all together, Emily concluded. Hearing his name, Buddy approached the group and was greeted with affection from everyone. It was clear he had become much more than a pet. He was the bond that had united people who now couldn't imagine their lives apart. The 4th anniversary of the day Emily met Buddy was celebrated with a party in the neighborhood square. The whole community attended, bringing their pets for a special gathering. 4 years ago, Emily said, giving a short speech to the crowd, I saw a dog who seemed fierce and discovered he was just scared and lonely. That taught me things aren't always what they seem at first glance. The audience applauded, and several neighbors shared their own stories about how Emily and Buddy had helped their pets over the years. Emily taught me to understand my dog better, Mrs. Helen said. Now we're both much happier. And Buddy showed my Rocky how to behave during walks, added Mr. Michael. The stories multiplied, creating a mosaic of lives that had been positively touched by the courage of a girl and the kindness of a dog. Walter, watching everything with pride, approached Emily Johnson. My dear, he said, when Buddy was waiting for me on that street, he didn't know he was waiting for you. Too. What do you mean, Mr. Walter? He needed me to feel safe, but he needed you to learn to love others. You completed each other. Emily hugged Walter, moved by his words. You completed me too, she said. You taught me about plants, patience, and how important it is to care for those we love. Buddy walked up to them and rested his head between them, as he always did when he wanted to join a tender moment. And you, Emily said, petting Buddy, taught me about courage, trusting my instincts, and how love can overcome any fear. The afternoon sun shone over the neighborhood square where it had all begun. Children played with their pets, adults talked about vet care, and the elderly shared stories about their animals. The transformation of that space, from a place blocked off by a frightened dog to a hub of community unity, perfectly symbolized the journey of everyone involved in the story. Look how much this place has changed, David remarked to Jennifer. Just like our daughter has, Jennifer replied, for the better. Buddy changed all of us, David added. He taught us about family, second chances, and how small gestures can have big impacts. As the sun began to set, the gathering in the square gradually ended. Families said goodbye, promising to meet again the following week for regular animal care activities. Emily, Buddy, and Walter were the last to leave. They walked slowly, savoring the final moments of that special day. Emily, Walter said, do you have any dreams for the future? I have many, she replied. I want to be a vet, keep helping animals, and one day have my own clinic. And Buddy, is he part of those plans? Emily looked at Buddy, walking calmly beside them. Buddy will always be part of my plans, she said firmly. He's my best friend, my first patient, and my most important teacher. And when you're a famous vet, Walter teased, will you remember an old man who taught you about gardening? Mr. Walter, Emily said, stopping to face him seriously, you're not just someone who taught me about gardening. You're my family, and family is never forgotten. Walter was moved by Emily's words. At 72, he had found a granddaughter of the heart who brought renewed light and purpose to his life. Then it's settled, he said. We'll keep looking after each other no matter what the future holds. Deal, Emily agreed. Buddy let out a soft bark as if agreeing to the pact too. When they reached Emily's house, Walter said goodbye as he always did, with a warm hug and a promise to see each other the next day. See you tomorrow, Buddy, Walter said, petting the dog. Take good care of Emily for me. Buddy wagged his tail and stood by Emily's side, as he always did when Walter left. See you tomorrow, Mr. Walter, Emily said. Dream of beautiful gardens. And you dream of all the animals you'll still help, Walter replied. Inside, Emily got ready for bed with Buddy beside her, just as they had done for the past 4 years. Before turning off the light, she looked at the dog and reflected on the entire journey they had shared. Buddy, she whispered, thank you for choosing me that day. My life became so much better because of you. Buddy settled at the foot of the bed, purring softly as he always did when completely relaxed and happy. Outside, the neighborhood slept peacefully. The neighborhood square was quiet, holding the memories of another day filled with joy and togetherness. The streets once blocked by fear had now become paths of meetings and friendships. And in two nearby houses, a 12-year-old girl and a 72-year-old man slept, thinking about the luck they'd had in finding each other through a dog, who once seemed fierce but only needed understanding and love. The story that began with fear and barriers had transformed into a tale of courage, friendship, and change. Emily Johnson, Buddy, and Walter had proven that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can create the most beautiful families. And so, in the calm of the night, the neighborhood rested, knowing the next day would bring new opportunities to care, love, and help. Because that was the most important lesson Emily Johnson, Buddy, and Walter had taught everyone. That love, when multiplied, never diminishes. It only grows and spreads, touching every life it meets along the way. The end. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you think Emily Johnson made the right choice by approaching Buddy? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.